In the heart of New York City, surrounded by towering skyscrapers and buzzing streets, there was a grand hotel that attracted people from all over the world. It wasn't just any hotel. It was one of those places where luxury dripped from every corner. From plush carpets to sparkling chandeliers, everything screamed elegance. The staff moved like clockwork, always on their toes, ensuring each guest felt like royalty. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky orange, a sleek black car pulled up at the entrance. Out stepped a man who immediately caught everyone's attention. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, his shoes gleamed under the lights, and he carried himself with an air of quiet authority. This wasn't someone you'd forget easily. His name? Sheikh Omar Al Farida, Billionaire, from Saudi Arabia, whose wealth stretched across industries and continents. But despite his success, there was something about him that seemed reserved, almost distant. The moment he walked in, the staff sprang into action. The concierge greeted him warmly, offering assistance before he even reached the front desk. A bellhop rushed forward to take his luggage, a single leather bag that looked expensive enough to buy a small car. Everything appeared smooth on the surface, but beneath it, tensions were brewing. You see, Sheikh Omar wasn't your typical tourist or businessman. While many wealthy travelers came to New York for meetings, shopping sprees, or Broadway shows, he had different plans. He wanted peace, a place to relax, reflect, and maybe do some work without interruptions. But right away, things didn't go as smoothly as expected. And it all boiled down to one thing: communication. Sheikh Omar spoke English well enough, but his accent was thick, and his way of expressing himself didn't always align with what the staff understood. For example, when he asked for a traditional Arabic tea service, the waiter nodded politely but returned with a generic tea bag and a cup of hot water. When he requested prayer mats to be placed discreetly in his room, they arrived hours later than promised, or worse, not at all. These weren't big issues on their own, but together they added up. Each mishap left Sheikh Omar feeling more frustrated and isolated. The staff, on the other hand, tried their best. They smiled through the confusion, scribbled notes furiously, and made promises to fix things. But no matter how hard they worked, they couldn't quite get it right. To them, this mysterious guest seemed impossible to please. Some whispered among themselves, wondering if he was being overly demanding. Others simply shrugged, assuming language barriers were to blame. What none of them realized was that Sheikh Omar wasn't upset because he was difficult. He was upset because he felt misunderstood. Meanwhile, tucked away in the background, far from the glitz and glamour of the lobby, worked a woman named Amina. She was part of the housekeeping team, responsible for keeping the room spotless and welcoming. Unlike the flashy guests and polished employees roaming the halls, Amina blended into the scenery. She wore her uniform proudly, though it was plain and practical, and moved quietly as she went about her tasks. Born and raised in Ghana, Amina had come to America years ago chasing dreams of a better life. Her days were long and physically demanding, but she never complained. Instead, she saved every penny she could, hoping someday to return home and open a school for children who lacked access to education. Education was her passion. It was what drove her, even during the toughest times. What most people didn't know about Amina was that she spoke fluent Arabic. Growing up, her family often hosted exchange students from North Africa, and over time, she picked up the language. It became a secret skill, something she rarely used outside of conversations with old friends back home. At the hotel, it didn't seem relevant. After all, why would a maid need to speak Arabic in a bustling American city? But fate has a funny way of connecting dots we can't see. One day, while cleaning Sheikh Omar's suite after he'd stepped out, Amina noticed something unusual on his bedside table. There was a Quran, its pages worn from use. Curious, she opened it gently and saw handwritten notes scribbled in the margins, verses marked for reflection, prayers written in elegant script. Something stirred inside her. She recognized the handwriting style, the care taken to preserve the sacred text. In that moment, she felt a strange kinship with the man who owned it. Over the next few days, Amina kept seeing glimpses of Sheikh Omar around the hotel. She watched as he grew increasingly agitated, his frustration evident even from afar. She noticed how the staff fumbled to understand him, how their attempts to help often fell short. It reminded her of her own struggles, of moments when she'd felt invisible or dismissed because of where she came from. And so, an idea began forming in her mind. Maybe, just maybe, she could step in and bridge the gap. Little did she know, this decision would change both their lives forever. As the days went by, Sheikh Omar's frustration only grew. Each morning started with a fresh hope that today would be different, that the staff would finally understand him and his needs. But each evening ended with the same heavy sigh of disappointment. It wasn't just about the little things anymore. It was the cumulative effect of feeling like no one truly saw or heard him. Take breakfast, for instance. One morning, he specifically asked for a traditional Middle Eastern meal, something simple, yet meaningful to him. He described it carefully, explaining how the dish should have soft flatbread, creamy hummus, tangy labneh, and freshly sliced cucumbers and tomatoes. The waiter nodded enthusiastically, jotting down notes as if everything made perfect sense. When the food arrived, however, it looked nothing like what he'd imagined. Instead of warm homemade bread, there were cold slices of store-bought pita. The hummus tasted bland, almost artificial, and the vegetables were clearly pre-cut and packaged. It wasn't just bad service, it felt like a dismissal of his culture, his identity. Then there were the prayer mats. As someone who valued his faith deeply, Sheikh Omar always carried a small travel mat wherever he went. But this time, wanting to make his stay more comfortable, he requested additional mats from the hotel so he could pray at ease without needing to unpack his own every time. The first day, nothing showed up. On the second day, when he followed up with the concierge, they assured him it would be taken care of immediately. By the third day, the mats finally appeared, but they were rolled haphazardly, dusty, and smelled faintly of mothballs. It was clear no effort had been put into preparing them properly. To Sheikh Omar, it felt disrespectful, even if unintentional. But perhaps the most frustrating moment came when he tried to arrange a charitable donation through the hotel's concierge desk. Back home, philanthropy wasn't just a hobby for him, it was a way of life. Wherever he traveled, he looked for opportunities to give back to the local community. In New York, he wanted to support education initiatives for underprivileged children. So, he approached the concierge, explaining his intention in detail. The amount he planned to donate was substantial enough to make a real difference. Yet, instead of helping him set up the transaction, the concierge misunderstood completely. Thinking he was asking for recommendations on tourist attractions, they handed him brochures for museums and parks. Sheikh Omar couldn't believe it. Here he was, trying to do something meaningful, and not only was he being ignored, but his intentions were being twisted into something entirely unrelated. That evening, he retreated to his suite earlier than usual, shutting himself off from the world. Sitting by the window, staring out at the glittering cityscape, he felt a deep loneliness wash over him. For all his wealth and influence, he might as well have been invisible. Amina noticed these moments unfolding around her. She wasn't directly involved in handling his requests, but she often overheard snippets of conversations while tidying up nearby rooms or restocking supplies. At first, she thought it was just another case of miscommunication, a common issue in a place where guests spoke dozens of languages and came from vastly different backgrounds. But the more she observed, the more she realized it ran deeper than that. This man wasn't simply misunderstood. He was being dismissed. His words, his customs, his very presence seemed to slip through the cracks of indifference. One afternoon, as she cleaned a room adjacent to Sheikh Omar's suite, she overheard him speaking to a manager. His tone was calm but firm, laced with quiet exasperation. "I've explained this 3 times already," he said slowly, enunciating each word. "Why is it still not done?" The manager stammered an apology, promising to rectify the situation, but Amina could tell it wouldn't stick. It was the same cycle repeating itself, promises made, promises broken. Later that evening, as she wheeled her cart down the hallway, she spotted him sitting alone in the lounge area. He looked tired, his shoulders slumped slightly, his gaze fixed on the floor. There was a vulnerability in his posture that tugged at her heartstrings. She remembered what it felt like to be overlooked, to have your voice drowned out because people assumed you didn't matter. Growing up in Ghana, she'd faced similar struggles. Even now, working in the hotel, she sometimes caught sideways glances from guests who barely acknowledged her existence. She knew what it meant to feel invisible. Her thoughts drifted back to the Quran she'd seen in his room. The handwritten notes, the careful markings, it was clear this man valued his faith deeply. And then there was the Arabic language, which connected them in ways neither of them could have anticipated. An idea began forming in her mind, tentative at first but growing stronger with each passing moment. What if she could step in? What if she could help bridge the gap between him and the staff? The next morning, as she worked her usual shift, she decided to test the waters. When Sheikh Omar stepped out of his room briefly, leaving the door ajar, she peeked inside to see if the Quran was still on the bedside table. Sure enough, it was there, untouched since the last time she'd seen it. Opening it gently, she flipped through the pages, marveling at the elegant handwriting. Some verses were highlighted, others accompanied by short reflections written in Arabic. It was personal, intimate, a glimpse into his inner world. That night, after finishing her rounds, Amina stayed late, lingering near the lounge where Sheikh Omar often sat. Her heart pounded as she rehearsed what she would say. Would he think she was intruding? Would he dismiss her outright? Taking a deep breath, she approached him cautiously, clutching her cleaning cart like a shield. "Assalamu alaikum," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Sheikh Omar froze mid-sip, lowering his cup of tea. His eyes widened in disbelief, scanning her face as though trying to process what he'd just heard. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, slowly, a flicker of recognition crossed his features. He responded in kind, his voice tinged with surprise. "Wa alaikum assalam." Their conversation started tentatively, both unsure of how much to share. But once they began talking, the floodgates opened. Amina explained how she'd learned Arabic during her childhood, thanks to her family hosting exchange students. Sheikh Omar listened intently, nodding along as she spoke. In turn, he opened up about his frustrations, sharing stories of his travels and the challenges he faced in unfamiliar places. They laughed over shared experiences of cultural misunderstandings, finding comfort in knowing they weren't alone. By the end of their chat, something remarkable had happened. The barriers between them, the wealth, the status, the roles they played in the hotel had dissolved. What remained was a genuine connection built on mutual respect and understanding. For the first time in days, Sheikh Omar smiled, not the polite smile he offered to strangers, but a warm, sincere expression that lit up his entire face. Word spread quickly among the hotel staff. How had Amina managed to connect with the billionaire when everyone else had failed? Some were curious, others skeptical, but none could deny the change in Sheikh Omar's demeanor. With Amina acting as his interpreter and confidant, his requests were finally fulfilled. The tea service arrived exactly as he described it. Fresh prayer mats were delivered promptly, neatly arranged and spotless. Even the charitable donation he'd been trying to organize was processed without a hitch. For the first time since his arrival, Sheikh Omar felt seen. And as for Amina, she discovered a newfound confidence in herself, a reminder that even the smallest gestures could have the biggest impact. The morning after their initial conversation, something shifted in the air at the hotel. Sheikh Omar, who had spent days feeling like an outsider, now walked through the lobby with a quiet confidence. His shoulders were no longer tense, his brow no longer furrowed. Instead, he carried himself with a sense of ease that hadn't been there before. And it wasn't just him. The energy around the staff seemed different, too. There was a buzz among them, whispers about how things were finally falling into place. Amina, on the other hand, felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, she was proud of what she'd done. She had stepped out of her comfort zone and reached out to someone who clearly needed help. But on the other hand, she worried about overstepping. After all, she was just a maid of background figure in the grand scheme of the hotel's operations. Who was she to insert herself into the life of a billionaire? Yet, every time she saw Sheikh Omar smile or heard him laugh while chatting with the staff, her doubts melted away. It was obvious that her intervention had made a difference. Their conversations became a daily ritual. Each evening, after finishing her cleaning rounds, Amina would find a quiet corner near the lounge where Sheikh Omar often sat. Sometimes they talked about practical matters, what meals he preferred, which amenities he needed for his prayers, or how best to arrange transportation for his meetings. Other times, their discussions wandered into deeper territory: family, faith, dreams, and even regrets. They discovered they had more in common than either of them could have guessed. For instance, Sheikh Omar shared stories about growing up in Saudi Arabia. He spoke fondly of his childhood, describing late-night gatherings under starlit skies where elders told tales of courage and wisdom. He explained how those moments shaped his values and inspired him to use his wealth for good. "Money means nothing if you can't make someone's life better," he said once, his voice steady but filled with conviction. Amina nodded thoughtfully, recognizing the truth in his words. In turn, Amina opened up about her own journey. She told him about her hometown in Ghana, a small village surrounded by lush greenery and vibrant markets. Life there was simple, but hard. Many children didn't have access to proper schools, and those who did often struggled with overcrowded classrooms and outdated materials. Despite these challenges, Amina excelled in her studies, fueled by a burning desire to create change. Her dream, she confessed, was to build a school back home, a place where kids could learn without limits, where education wasn't a privilege, but a right. Sheikh Omar listened intently, his expression softening as she spoke. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, stroking his beard thoughtfully. "You know," he began, "your dream reminds me of my own mission. I've always believed that true success isn't measured by how much money you accumulate, but by how many lives you touch." Then, almost casually, he added, "Tell me more about this school idea." At first, Amina hesitated. Talking about her dream was one thing. Asking for help was another. She didn't want to come across as opportunistic, especially given the circumstances. But Sheikh Omar pressed gently, assuring her that he genuinely wanted to understand. So she took a deep breath and laid out her vision: a modern school equipped with libraries, science labs, and computer rooms. A place not just for academics, but for nurturing creativity, critical thinking, and leadership skills. As she spoke, her eyes sparkled with excitement, painting a vivid picture of what could be done. By the end of her explanation, Sheikh Omar was silent for a moment. Then, with a slight smile, he said, "This is exactly the kind of project I love supporting. Let's make it happen." Amina blinked, startled. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I said," he replied firmly. "I'll fund your school, fully." "No, no, no," Amina protested immediately, shaking her head. "I can't accept that. You've already helped me so much by bridging the gap here at the hotel. I couldn't possibly." "Why not?" Sheikh Omar interrupted, raising a hand to stop her. "You've worked hard for this dream. Don't let pride stand in your way. Besides," he added with a chuckle, "consider it repayment for saving me from weeks of frustration." Amina laughed nervously, still unsure, but Sheikh Omar wasn't one to take no for an answer. Over the next few days, he insisted on discussing the details. Together they drafted plans, researched locations, and sketched out blueprints. At first, Amina felt overwhelmed by the scale of it all. Building a school wasn't just about pouring money into bricks and mortar. It required careful planning, community involvement, and long-term sustainability. But Sheikh Omar guided her patiently, sharing insights from his own philanthropic ventures. Slowly but surely, the vision began to take shape. Meanwhile, the rest of the hotel staff couldn't help but notice the transformation. The once distant Billionaire was now a regular presence in the hallways, exchanging pleasantries with employees and showing genuine interest in their lives. He even picked up a few phrases in Spanish to chat with the kitchen staff, earning grins and laughter from everyone. Amina, too, found herself stepping into a new role. No longer content to stay behind the scenes, she became the unofficial liaison between Sheikh Omar and the management team. Her ability to translate not just language but culture proved invaluable. One day, during a particularly lively discussion about the school project, Sheikh Omar turned to Amina and said, "You know, you're not just building a school, you're building hope. That's powerful." His words stuck with her long after their conversation ended. For years she had dreamed of making a difference, but she never imagined it would happen like this. What started as a chance encounter in a luxury hotel was blossoming into something far greater, a partnership rooted in trust, respect, and shared humanity. As the days passed, Amina began to see Sheikh Omar not just as a wealthy benefactor, but as a friend. Their bond went beyond titles and roles. It was built on mutual understanding and a shared commitment to creating positive change. And though neither of them knew it yet, this connection would leave a lasting impact not just on their lives, but on countless others whose paths they would cross along the way. Months had passed since that fateful evening when a quiet maid and a misunderstood billionaire first connected over a shared language. What began as a simple conversation in Arabic had blossomed into something neither of them could have predicted. Partnership driven by trust, vision, and an unwavering belief in the power of education. The hotel, once a place where Sheikh Omar felt invisible, had transformed into a hub of collaboration and mutual respect. Every day, Amina found herself stepping further out of the shadows, no longer confined to her cleaning cart or hidden away. In guest rooms, she became a central figure in planning the school project. She spent hours on video calls with architects in Ghana, discussing design plans and ensuring the building would meet the needs of the community. At the same time, she worked closely with Sheikh Omar, who poured his resources and expertise into making the dream a reality. For Sheikh Omar, this project was more than just charity, it was personal. He saw pieces of himself in Amina's story. The determination to rise above circumstances, the hunger for knowledge, and the desire to give back. Watching her navigate meetings with engineers and suppliers reminded him of his own early days in business, when he fought to prove himself against all odds. Her resilience inspired him. pushing him to dig deeper into his philanthropic work. The staff at the hotel couldn't help but notice the change in both of them. Amina, who had always been polite but reserved, now carried herself with newfound confidence. She spoke up during team huddles, offering suggestions based on her experiences coordinating logistics for the school. When asked about it, she simply smiled and said, "If you don't use your voice, no one will hear you." Those words resonated deeply with many of her coworkers, especially the younger ones who often felt overlooked. Sheikh Omar, too, had become a different person. Gone was the aloof guest who kept to himself, frustrated by misunderstandings. Now he greeted employees by name, asking about their families and sharing stories from his travels. During one particularly memorable lunch break, he joined the kitchen staff in preparing a traditional Middle Eastern dish. As they chopped vegetables and kneaded dough together, laughter filled the room. For the first time, he wasn't just a billionaire, he was part of the team. But the real magic happened when the two worlds collided. One afternoon, Sheikh Omar invited the entire housekeeping staff to a meeting in the hotel's conference room. Most of them assumed it was some kind of training session, so they arrived cautiously, unsure of what to expect. Instead, they were greeted by a slideshow presentation showcasing the progress of the school in Ghana. Photos of the construction site showed workers laying foundations, while sketches depicted classrooms brimming with light and color. "This is your work," Sheikh Omar told them, gesturing toward Amina. "Without her dedication, not just to this project, but to connecting us all, we wouldn't be here today." The room erupted in applause, and Amina blushed, humbled by the recognition. But Sheikh Omar wasn't done yet. Turning to the group, he continued, "I've learned so much from all of you these past months. You've taught me that hospitality isn't just about serving guests. It's about seeing people for who they are. That's why I want to thank each of you personally for welcoming me, for supporting Amina, and for reminding me that we're stronger together." It was a moment none of them would forget. For years, many of the staff had felt like cogs in a machine, their contributions going unnoticed. But now, standing in that room, they realized their efforts mattered. They weren't just cleaning rooms or serving meals, they were creating experiences, bridging gaps, and even changing lives. Back in Ghana, the school took shape faster than anyone expected. Thanks to Sheikh Omar's funding and Amina's relentless drive, construction moved quickly. Local artisans crafted furniture by hand, infusing the space with warmth and culture. Teachers were hired, curriculum developed, and supplies ordered. By the time the final brick was laid, excitement buzzed through the village like wildfire. When the inauguration date was set, Sheikh Omar insisted on attending. "This isn't just Amina's dream," he told her. "It's ours. And I want to see it come to life." The ceremony itself was a celebration unlike any other. Hundreds of people gathered under a canopy of colorful flags, singing songs and dancing to the beat of drums. Children ran barefoot across the grounds, their laughter echoing through the air. Elders blessed the school, sprinkling water and reciting prayers for prosperity and wisdom. At the center of it all stood Amina, beaming with pride as she welcomed everyone to Al-Lama Academy, a name chosen by Sheikh Omar, meaning the community school. During his speech, Sheikh Omar spoke passionately about the importance of education. "Knowledge is the greatest equalizer," he said, his voice steady and sincere. "It doesn't care about borders, backgrounds, or bank accounts. It belongs to everyone, and today we're giving it a home." As he stepped down from the podium, the crowd erupted in cheers. But the loudest applause came from Amina, who wiped tears from her eyes as she embraced him tightly. In that moment, there was no billionaire or maid, just two people united by a shared purpose. The impact of the school rippled far beyond its walls. Parents who had never finished their own education enrolled in adult literacy classes held in The evenings. Teenagers formed clubs to explore science, art, and technology. Even neighboring villages sent representatives, hoping to replicate the model in their communities. Slowly but surely, the academy became a beacon of hope, a testament to what could be achieved when people worked together. For Amina, returning to New York after the trip was bittersweet. Part of her longed to stay in Ghana, to watch the school grow and nurture generations of students. But another part knew her journey wasn't over. Back at the hotel, she resumed her duties with renewed energy, mentoring younger staff members and encouraging them to pursue their dreams. Her story became a source of inspiration, proving that no matter where you start, anything is possible with hard work and support. Sheikh Omar, too, returned to his travels, but he carried the lessons of the hotel with him wherever he went. He began seeking out similar projects, using his wealth to uplift marginalized communities worldwide. His interactions with Amina and the staff had taught him the value of listening, not just to words, but to hearts. It was a lesson he vowed never to forget. Though their paths eventually diverged, the bond they formed remained unshakable. They stayed in touch, exchanging updates and photos of the school's progress. Occasionally, Sheikh Omar would send gifts, a book, a scarf, or a handwritten note of encouragement. And whenever Amina faced challenges, she reminded herself of his words, "You're not just building a school, you're building hope." In the end, what started as a misunderstanding at a luxury hotel evolved into a story of connection, empowerment, and the universal truth that we are all closer than we think, if only we take the time to listen. The months following the inauguration of Alama Academy were a whirlwind of activity and transformation, not just for Amina and Sheikh Omar, but for everyone whose lives they touched. The school quickly became more than just a building. It was a symbol of hope, a catalyst for change, and a reminder that even the smallest actions could spark something extraordinary. In Ghana, the impact was immediate and profound. Parents who had once struggled to afford basic necessities now sent their children to a school equipped with modern facilities and passionate teachers. For many of these kids, it was the first time they sat in a classroom with proper desks, books, and electricity. Every morning, as the sun rose over the village, the sound of laughter and learning filled the air. Children recited poems, solved math problems on chalkboards, and painted colorful murals on the walls. Their eyes sparkled with curiosity, their minds eager to absorb everything around them. But the ripple effects extended far beyond education. With the school came jobs. Teachers, administrators, janitors, and cooks found employment within its walls. Local businesses thrived as parents had more disposable income to spend on groceries, clothing, and supplies. Even the surrounding villages began organizing community meetings inspired by the success of Alama Academy. It wasn't just about schooling anymore. It was about empowerment, unity, and breaking cycles of poverty. Back in New York, life at the hotel also underwent a quiet revolution. The staff, inspired by what they'd witnessed through Amina and Sheikh Omar's partnership, started seeing their roles differently. They realized that hospitality wasn't just about providing service, it was about creating connections, fostering understanding, and making people feel valued. Slowly but surely, the culture of the workplace shifted. Employees began taking the initiative, suggesting improvements, and supporting one another in ways they hadn't before. Amina, meanwhile, stepped into a leadership role she never imagined for herself. Though her official title remained unchanged, she became a mentor to younger staff members, sharing advice on everything from career growth to personal resilience. She often reminded them, "Don't let anyone tell you your dreams are too big. If I can build a school halfway across the world while cleaning rooms, you can achieve anything." Her story spread throughout the hotel, becoming a source of pride for everyone involved. Guests occasionally asked about the woman who spoke Arabic and dreamed of educating children in Africa. Management, recognizing her contributions, offered her opportunities to grow professionally. When they proposed promoting her to a supervisory position, Amina hesitated at first. "I'm not sure I'm ready," she confessed. But Sheikh Omar, ever the encourager, reminded her, "You've already proven yourself capable. Trust in your strength." With his support, she accepted the promotion, transitioning from housekeeping to a role overseeing guest relations. It was a challenging shift, requiring new skills and responsibilities, but Amina embraced it wholeheartedly. Her ability to connect with people from diverse backgrounds made her an asset to the team. Whether helping a confused traveler find their way or mediating cultural misunderstandings, she approached every task with patience and empathy. As for Sheikh Omar, his experience at the hotel marked a turning point in how he viewed philanthropy. Before meeting Amina, his charitable efforts had been admirable but somewhat detached. He donated money, attended galas, and signed checks without truly engaging with the communities he aimed to help. Now he understood the importance of being present, of listening to people's stories, and of collaborating rather than dictating. He began traveling more frequently, visiting projects firsthand and immersing himself in local cultures. His wealth remained vast, but his focus shifted from accumulation to impact. One evening, during a rare visit back to the hotel, Sheikh Omar gathered the staff for an impromptu gathering. Standing in the same conference room where they'd celebrated the school's progress months earlier, he addressed them with heartfelt gratitude. "When I first arrived here," he said, "I felt invisible, misunderstood, frustrated. But then, someone saw me not as a billionaire, not as a foreigner, but as a human being. That person changed my perspective forever." He turned to Amina, smiling warmly. "Because of her, I learned that true wealth isn't measured in dollars or properties. It's measured in relationships and trust in the lives we touch. And because of all of you, I rediscovered the joy of connection." His words resonated deeply with everyone in the room. Some nodded in agreement, others wiped away tears, and a few clapped softly, overwhelmed by emotion. It was a moment of collective pride, a reminder that their work mattered, not just to guests but to each other. Over time, the bond between Sheikh Omar and Amina evolved into a lifelong friendship. Though their paths rarely crossed physically, she busy managing her new responsibilities at the hotel. He traveling the globe, they stayed connected through regular phone calls and messages. They shared updates on the school, discussed new ideas for projects, and reflected on the lessons they'd learned along the way. Their conversations always circled back to one central theme: the power of human connection. Years later, when Amina finally saved enough to return to Ghana permanently, she did so with a heart full of gratitude and a mind brimming with plans. She took charge of expanding Al Umma Academy, adding new classrooms, introducing vocational training programs, and partnering with universities abroad. Under her leadership, the school flourished, earning recognition as a model for sustainable education initiatives in rural areas. Sheikh Omar, though miles away, continued to play a vital role. He funded scholarships, sponsored teacher training workshops, and visited whenever his schedule allowed. Each trip reaffirmed his belief in the importance of investing in people. "Education is the foundation of everything," he often said. "Without it, we're building on sand." Their story eventually reached wider audiences, inspiring countless others to take action in their own communities. Documentaries were made, articles written, and speeches delivered, all highlighting the unlikely partnership between a maid and a billionaire. Yet, despite the attention, neither Amina nor Sheikh Omar sought fame. To them, the real victory lay in the lives they transformed, the barriers they broke, and the bridges they built. Looking back, Amina often thought about that first day she greeted Sheikh Omar in Arabic. She remembered the surprise in his eyes, the warmth in his smile, and the way their worlds collided in the most unexpected way. At the time, she hadn't known what would come of it. All she knew was that she wanted to help, to reach out, to make a difference. And in doing so, she discovered not only her own potential, but also the boundless possibilities of human connection. For Sheikh Omar, the memory served as a constant reminder of humility and grace. In a world where status often divided people, he had learned that true understanding transcended titles and appearances. By opening himself up to someone he might otherwise have overlooked, he gained far more than he gave. And so, their journey came full circle, a testament to the idea that greatness isn't defined by wealth or power, but by the willingness to listen, to learn, and to lift others up. In the end, what started as a simple act of kindness in a bustling New York hotel blossomed into a legacy of hope, proving that no matter where we come from, we all share the same dreams, struggles, and capacity for change.